Παρά τις αποσπασματικές μειώσεις φόρων και κοινωνικών εισφορών τα τελευταία χρόνια, η Ελλάδα παραμένει μία από τις χώρες με τα πιο σύνθετα και επιβαρυντικά φορολογικά συστήματα στην Ευρώπη. Αυτό καταγράφηκε και στον δείκτη αποτίμησης της Ευρωπαϊκής Φορολογικής Πολιτικής, του Διεθνούς Ιδρύματος Tax Foundation που εδρεύει στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες και εξειδικεύεται στην παγκόσμια φορολογία. Όπως εξήγησε στο Euronews ο Διευθύνων Σύμβουλος του Tax Foundation, Ντάνιελ Μπαν, που βρέθηκε στην Αθήνα για το πρώτο Φόρουμ Οικονομικής Ελευθερίας, η Ελλάδα χαρακτηρίζεται από φορολογία που πνίγει όχι μόνο τα εισοδήματα αλλά και τις νέες επενδύσεις.
Mr. Daniel Ban, thank you for this interview to Euronews Greek. The Tax Foundation has recently published its 2024 European Tax Policy Scorecard. Greece ranks 25th out of 32 European countries, pretty low. What does this mean practically, and how does it impact the overall economy?
Practically, it means that Greece does not have a well-designed tax system, and that will eventually mean that the slow growth economy will continue to underperform relative to what could happen if Greece invested in a more pro-growth tax policy, especially on business investment, things on property taxes, things for income taxes, that would allow companies to earn a higher return when they're investing in Greece after tax return, and for workers to keep more of their earnings. And in the property market to avoid some of the cost crises we've seen in other jurisdictions which Greece is dealing with as well.
But the Greek government has been cutting some taxes and social contribution. Why hasn't that helped place of the position of Greece?
So the rankings that we develop rely on critical pieces of tax policy. There's dozens of tax policy decisions. We do not capture all of them in the scorecard, but what we try to capture are the most important ones when it comes to decisions of different incentives, whether there's neutrality, whether there are multiple taxes in a particular area, overlapping taxes in a way. And what we've captured really represents, from our point of view, the most important tax policy decisions. And even though the government has, as revenues have performed better, been reducing taxes in some areas, they have not made the bigger and more important choices that could support a better ranking.
The Greek government has been collecting extra tax revenue thanks to growth and fighting tax evasion. Would that give more room for tax cuts, and which direction should they go to? I mean, direct taxes, indirect taxes, consumption taxes?
Sure. So as governments receive more revenue than they're expecting, our hope, and especially here in Greece, is that they would invest that in better performance for the tax system overall. For Greece in particular, this means avoiding high taxes on new investment. And particularly the problem that Greece faces, that a lot of other countries face, is that when businesses are investing in new equipment or new buildings or new factories, the burden on that investment is not economically correct. So correcting that distortion is really important. On the property tax side, the real estate transfer tax is particularly inefficient. In fact, it probably should be abolished, given other fiscal constraints. And there are some changes on the personal income tax side that should be done as well. In Greece, a lot of individuals who would otherwise be subject to personal income tax rates are self-employed or have their own companies, and this shows the distortions that are built into the progressive rate structure with a high rate at relatively, I would say, mediocre income levels.
In Greece, there is a strong debate about VAT on basic goods and especially food. If cutting that, the VAT would help consumers, what do you think?
So there's a couple of things here. Governments have been dealing with a lot of challenges recently. One of them has been inflation, and that has meant that governments are interested in lowering the cost of living for citizens, and there are different ways you can go about doing this. Cutting VAT on basic goods is not the right approach. In fact, VAT is a tax policy that should have applicability to almost everything at a single rate. If the government is concerned about cost of living or particular households at lower income ranges, there's better policies to support those households, either through direct transfers or other changes in the income tax rather than VAT. A VAT applies to everybody, whether you are poor or rich, whether you're buying a little amount of basic goods and foods, or whether you're buying a lot. So it's not a very targeted policy if you're interested in supporting households that have been dealing with a cost of living crisis. And it should be instead used to raise sufficient revenue for other purposes.
So if you could suggest a couple of correction movements for the Greek government to enhance the Greek competitiveness, where will you emphasize?
So I think let's start from the big picture. One of the things that you see when you see the Greek economy is that it is a relatively good performer among low growth countries in Europe. And that's not necessarily a bad place to be, but there's an opportunity to move into a higher gear for growth. And especially with all the challenges that we face on the world today, more growth allows for more opportunities for addressing some of these challenges. And the primary opportunity, I think, for driving higher growth is looking at the way the tax system punishes new investment, and particularly for small and medium-sized businesses that could potentially become larger and more successful businesses over time. And this gets to the depreciation schedules, a very niche area of the tax code, but it's complex and it punishes new investment and is particularly harmful for small and medium-sized and growing businesses. The treatment of business losses is another area where the Greek government should pay attention to how it underperforms relative to other economies when it comes to supporting growing businesses, businesses that do run losses before they're able to innovate and turn a profit. Those are some of the areas that I would look at, especially with respect to thinking about long-term growth.